You feel better. In the meantime, let's turn to some Sunday showdowns. We'll go through all of the games coming up on this Sunday slate of Week 13. And let's start with the 8-win Browns and the 8-win Titans. Adam Rank, is there a quarterback you have your eye on?
Well, I like Ryan Tannehill a lot. I miss Zeppelin's rankings right here, so I don't know where he or she had him. But I will say this. Tannehill has been an excellent quarterback for the entirety of the season. Now, fantasy-wise, for a couple of weeks there, not so great. And maybe you broke up with them. It was getting close to the holidays. You weren't sure you wanted to commit or not. But now that we've had a couple of weeks apart, I think it's time to bring him back and say, Ryan, let's go run through the playoffs together. I know you're still on the waiver wire. Let me pick you back up. I think he's got a great schedule moving forward, and it starts this week against the Cleveland Browns. So if you have Ryan Tannehill, I say you start him with confidence.
Yeah, Rank, I like that. I'm going to say you start Austin Hooper, and it really is because the Tennessee Titans are allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game, the Titans, since Week 6, and he scored last week. And, again, Baker Mayfield needs that big guy. You're talking about play-action pass. If it's not Jarvis Landry, it seems like he'll be looking to Austin Hooper, especially in the red zone. And to put a little cherry on top, he went to the great De La Salle High School out of Concord, California, which, you got to go with the Spartan anytime you can.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's true. Go for an NFC West battle between the Rams and the Cardinals. Michael F. Florio, what's on your mind here?
Yeah, I know it's wild to say that beware of DeAndre Hopkins, but I think you should beware of DeAndre Hopkins this week. Since Week 6, he is the wide receiver 27 in fantasy, and he has fewer than 11 fantasy points in 4 of his last 6 games. And he's going up against Jalen Ramsey this week, and those two have a lot of history together. And in those games, D-Hop has averaged 6.3 catches and 72 yards, and he has just 3 touchdowns in 7 games against Ramsey. And it's not just Ramsey. The Rams as a whole allow the fewest fantasy points and yards to wide receivers. So just beware of him this week. I wouldn't expect his normal production.
Yeah, and I have a sleeper here in this game, which I'll be calling. It's Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett, tight end, sleeper. The tight end position has been tough, but he gets utilized like a wide receiver. You see here, he lines about at the number 1 position. They throw him the ball a ton. They try to find a way to get him going. And I think this Cardinal team is going to be so focused on Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods that Gerald Everett is going to have an opportunity to make some plays here for you. So I would, if you need a tight end to try to help you get in the playoffs, Gerald Everett is your guy.
Always could use some tight end help wherever we can find it. Eagles versus the Packers. I'm going to say Miles Sanders is a must start in this one, partially because of the matchup. The Packers have allowed 7 top 12 fantasy running back weekly finishes this season. They have really struggled against the running back position. The other part of it is Carson Wentz struggling mightily, and his struggles have been talked about ad nauseum at this point. But you do wonder at some point, do the Eagles turn to their running game a little bit more, give their running back a little bit more work to take some of the pressure off their quarterback in a game that at this point they desperately need to win to try and keep pace in the NFC East. All right, we'll hit the rest of the Sunday slate. Actually, I'm a little bit too soon. Go ahead, Florio.
I was going to say, Marcus, you said a lot how we were talking bad about Carson Wentz. I'm not even saying sit him this week. I'm saying you can drop him. He is the QB 28 since Week 8. That means even in 2 quarterback leagues, he's not cracking the top 24. He's thrown 300 yards just once this year, top 15 quarterback in 1 of his last 4 games. And that matchup with Seattle, which is what we were looking forward to, that is now behind him. The matchup ahead isn't as favorable. So I think you could just purge your lineup of Carson Wentz, get him off of it.
Between the suddenly quarterback-rich Denver Broncos and the Chiefs, Florio, what you got here?
I'm saying beware of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know he was your first-round pick and everything, but this is Week 13. We got to win to get into the playoffs in some instances, and he did not practice this week because he's dealing with an illness. That has me worried because we've already seen his work decreasing as of late. I don't blame them when you have Patrick Mahomes and he can just throw the ball up to Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and you're going to get all that production. Why would you even bother running the ball? But they've used CEH a little bit less. They've used Le'Veon Bell a little bit more. He only had 9 touches in the last time they played against Denver. So all of that alone together, has me scared. And I'm saying just beware of him this week.
It's been frustrating at times with Edwards-Helaire the last couple of weeks. I'm saying to sit Jerry Jeudy. I mean, the good sign is that the quarterback situation does look like it's back to something akin to normal in Denver. And Jeudy does lead the team in targets and receiving yards. The problem is that's not really a high bar. He has just 2 games with 70 or more yards in a contest. Now he's facing this Chiefs defense that's given up the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. As we talk about rookie wide receivers, it just has not popped for Jeudy this year the way that it has for some of his other fellow rookies there. So this is a week that I would probably stay away from him. We teased Saints and Falcons a little bit earlier. Taysom Hill getting another start for New Orleans. Is he a fantasy start, Adam Ray?
Yeah, Marcus, I wanted to circle back on this just so anybody didn't get confused what we were talking about earlier, in that I do believe the Falcons are going to defend him a little bit different this week, and he's probably not going to run for 2 touchdowns, but I really do believe in a lot of his ability. I do believe that he can throw a touchdown pass, even though we haven't seen it. I do believe that his running ability still gives him a safe enough floor to where you can feel comfortable starting him, and it gives him that crazy upside too. So I say that you still continue to start Taysom Hill.
I like it, Rank. And because of Taysom Hill, I'm saying you can start Latavius Murray this week. Since Taysom Hill has taken over as the starting quarterback, Latavius Murray is the RB10 in fantasy football. And in those 2 game spans, he has more carries, yards, touchdowns, fantasy points, and the same number of targets and snaps as Alvin Kamara. It's kind of like a Space Jam switch in fantasy value between these two, because Latavius Murray is the RB10, and Alvin Kamara hasn't been a top 40 running back with Taysom Hill. So go ahead and get Murray into your lineup this week.
We're back to our Sunday showdowns with the Giants and the Seahawks. Daniel Jones might be a game-time decision, but Adam Rank, who do you have your eye on here?
Well, I'm going to say that Tyler Lockett is a start. And obviously it's been a little volatile with him this season because it's not consistent. And this week, though, James Bradbury is expected to be on DK Metcalf. Not that I would sit DK Metcalf by any stretch of the imagination. That'll just give more opportunity for Lockett. And the thing that stands out to me, he runs 52% of his routes from the slot. The Giants have allowed 5 receiving touchdowns to slot receivers this season. They've allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers. So to me, this is an easy call to start Tyler Lockett.
You know, with tight end position being so banged up, if you're lucky enough to have Evan Ingram, start him. This is a matchup to start. If you watched that Monday night game, Dallas Goedert got after the Seattle Seahawks, and I think Evan Ingram and his ability to be more of a receiver out of than a tight end is going to open up. Obviously, you see at the bottom, Seahawks are allowing the most reception yardage per game in NFL history this season. So expect, even with Colt McCoy, expect him to target Evan Ingram a ton this game.
All right, Patriots and the Chargers. Maurice, stay with you. You have a sleeper for this one.
Yeah, don't sleep on Jacoby Myers. I think this is a game where he may have a ton of catches. I know Cam Newton and the Patriots only threw for 84 yards against the Cardinals, but this Chargers defense, yes, they can get to the quarterback and all those good things, but they give up a lot of yards on the back end sometimes. Gave up a ton to the Jets, and don't be surprised if you see Jacoby Myers use that speed and get down the field as well as catch a ton of passes from Cam Newton.
I think Austin Eckler this week in this game is a must start, and this is kind of a flex for me because I was leading the Austin Eckler hype train coming into the season, and all summer long people were in my mentions saying he's not an RB1, he can't handle that workload. Well, he came back last week and had 25 touches. He's now had over 20 touches in every single game that he has stayed healthy in this year. I don't think we're saying that anymore. He can handle an RB1 workload. And last week, he had 16 targets, 11 catches, and 85 receiving yards. That's wide receiver 1 type volume that you're getting out of your running back, and it wasn't a 1-week thing. With Justin Herbert this year, he's averaging over 10 targets and nearly 9 catches per game. It doesn't matter who he's playing. You start this guy every single week.
All right, Detroit and Chicago. Matthew Stafford, DeAndre Swift are listed as questionable. I'm saying you got to start T.J. Hawkinson in this one. I mean, he's still been one of the top tight ends all season long, as frustrating as the position has been. Throw in the fact that Kenny Golladay looks like he's going to miss his 5th straight game with that hip injury. They've got to go somewhere with the football, and I know the Bears defense immediately looks like an imposing unit, and they are, but they have given up some opportunities to the tight end position. And with so few targets right now available in the Detroit offense, Hawkinson should see plenty of work from whoever the quarterback may end up being this week.
You know what? I don't know if you noticed our guy, Mark L., during his rankings here, has Mitch Trubisky at number 9. And let me tell you something right now. Mark is absolutely correct because Mitch has averaged 26 fantasy points per game in his last 4 against the Lions. He also has 3 touchdown passes in each of those 4 games. So for all of you who are trying to sully the name of Allen Robinson and besmirch Mitch Trubisky, I'm telling you right now, the Bears are going to level up at 6-6, and Mitch is going to have a great game.
Speaking of which, he will be on the field as the Texans host the Colts this Sunday. Rank, who are you starting?
Well, I'm going to go with Duke Johnson. Whether David Johnson returns or not, it really doesn't matter to me. And the reason is there's a lot of targets up for grabs now that Will Fuller has been suspended for the rest of the season. And when I look at this Texans roster, Brandon Cooks is obviously the number 1 wide receiver, but you have QT, then you have Isaiah Coulter and Steven Mitchell. To me, Duke Johnson is their second best receiver, their second best pass catcher. I believe that they're going to find creative ways to get the football into his hand. I believe he sees a huge target increase. So if you have him, I think he's a nice little flex play this week.
A guy like as a sleeper this week is Phillip Rivers. Actually played well over the last few weeks. He's had 17 or more points in back-to-back games, and now he gets to take aim at this Texans defense that's given up a lot of points to the quarterback position. Could be a nice add into the roster, maybe if you have Tom Brady, who's on a bye this week, for instance. All right, got Jags and Vikings. Maurice Jones-Drew, we'll start with you as a former Jaguar. Who do you like?
Deep sleeper here. Colin Johnson. I actually got a chance to coach against him in high school. It's good to see him out there playing, but he had 8 targets last week against the Cleveland Browns, 4 catches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. And it seems like him and Mike Glennon kind of have a thing. He's a 6'6", big body guy. And again, just like the Jaguars give up a ton of yards, so do the Vikings defensively throughout the air. So if you need a receiver, Colin Johnson.
Definitely a sneaky call. I like Kirk Cousins on the other side of this ball. He's been playing good football as of late. This game is in Minnesota, which is big for him because he averages double the amount of fantasy points at home compared to on the road. And it's a great matchup against the Jaguars, who allow the 3rd most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this year. So with him playing well and having a good matchup and this game being in Minnesota, I think he is a QB1 this week, and I would start him.
With Cincinnati at Miami, and I will advocate starting Mike Gesicki. And I know it has been a frustrating year for Gesicki, for anybody who has started Mike Gesicki, but this looks like a pretty good matchup. Cincinnati is allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Tight ends have been targeted 90 times against this Bengals defense. That's 4th most in the league. So this feels like a week, especially if it is Ryan Fitzpatrick starting, that maybe he pulls the trigger a few times and gets his tight end quite involved in the game plan. All right, last but not least, Raiders and Jets. Adam Rank, who you got?
I'm going to go with Derek Carr because we are talking a little bit too much about the Jets, and I need to recalibrate here. And I know a lot of people were disappointed. Derek Carr did not have a great game last week against the Atlanta Falcons, but we need to let that go. And look at this matchup. And look at the matchup against the Jets, who've allowed 28 points per game to quarterbacks since week 8. That's the most in the NFL. They've allowed a top 8 fantasy quarterback in 4 consecutive games. So I know a lot of you rage dropped him this week. I'm picking him up and I'm starting him.
Dale Rank, and I'm going to say, if you're going to start him, a sleeper should be Henry Ruggs. We just saw some highlight tapes here, or highlight plays of him catching the ball down the field. Expect the Raiders to start taking more shots down the field. Nelson Aguilar's a little banged up with an ankle injury, and so I think this is a great game to kind of get the Raiders back on track.